Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Alejandra Arguez. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am one of the program coordinators at the Idea Center. Welcome to today's WISE workshop. Today, you will be hearing from the teaching and learning comments on making your personal statement stand out. So we're really excited to have you here today. This is a Zoom meeting, so feel free to ask questions throughout or put questions in the chat. This presentation will be recorded and posted on the Idea Center YouTube channel. So I will go ahead and pass it on over to our presenter.
Thanks, Alejandra. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. We know it is a small group, but it's intimate. Maybe that will encourage you to ask questions and make this more of a conversation as opposed to just me talking to you for an hour straight. So I recognize some names from workshops that the Writing Hub has done in the past years. So good to see you again. Yeah, please feel free to ask your questions, to ask me to elaborate, to slow down, give more examples. I'm happy to do all of that. Okay, so my name is Maggie Thatch Morshed. I am the Undergraduate Services Coordinator at the Writing Hub. If we could just take a couple of minutes for you to fill out a pre-workshop survey. It's really important for us to gather information about what students are eager to go to workshops about and what they want to learn about, and then likewise, at the end, there will be a post-workshop survey. So I'm going to put this link in the chat and just give everybody maybe 2 to 3 minutes to finish them. Maybe you can give me a thumbs up when you are done. So here is the link that's in the chat. So let's just take a couple of minutes to fill that out, please. If you could just signal when you're done by typing in the chat, like a thumbs up or a done, that would be great. And as folks are finishing that up, I do want to just say that for us, in all of our workshops, the land acknowledgement is really important. So we recognize that UC San Diego was built on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation. And we pause now to acknowledge the land and the original people of the area where the university is located. Today, the Kumeyaay people continue to maintain their political sovereignty and cultural traditions. As vital members of the San Diego community, we acknowledge their tremendous contributions to our region and thank them for their stewardship. If you're interested in learning more, we have included a website there. Okay, so hopefully that is enough time to fill out the pre-workshop survey. So here's another thing that I'd like us to utilize the chat about. So before we get started into the content of this workshop, I want to know from the people in this Zoom space, where are you in the application process? Are you at the beginning? Are you drafting? Are you toward the end? I'd just like to get some kind of idea of where people are at in the application process. Okay, thanks, beginning. Okay, what other thoughts here? Drafting, but still in the beginning. Okay, great. Same. Okay, cool. Okay, great. Knowing this really helps me cater the content in this workshop for the folks in the room. Okay, so another question. How are you feeling about it? How do you feel? Do you feel confident? You feel good? You feel ready? You feel prepared? You feel anxious? What are some feelings about where you are in the application process? Stressed. Okay, definitely relate. Other thoughts? Okay. This is a common response, right? I very rarely meet a person who's like, I feel really good about the personal statement writing process. It's always a really stressful thing when you are creating a document about yourself in a way that you don't really think and write about too much. So let's think about how maybe we can reframe the approach toward personal statements so that one, it can be a little bit more enjoyable, but two, it can give you a little bit more clarity so you don't feel so anxious and stressed. Okay, so let's start from the basics. Think about a personal statement as a rhetorical situation. In other words, it's not a comprehensive account of who you are as a person. So if we're thinking about a rhetorical situation, I know that that's just a fancy way of saying like things that you write for your class, right? That's a rhetorical situation, whether that's an academic paper or a lab report. And with the rhetorical situations, you should think about these three things. You should think about what kind of genre is it? For instance, is it an academic argument? If that's the case, the rules are a little bit different than if it's a lab report, than if it's a book summary, things of this nature, right? So think about what kind of genre it is. Think about the audience that it's written for, and for what reason that document exists. So let's dive into these three things, because understanding these three things will really help situate yourself and how you should be thinking about your personal statement and how you should be writing it. So a closer look at genre. So genre is the boundaries and expectations of a genre. That's it's what the audience implicitly brings with them, right? So if you're writing a lab report, the boundaries and expectations of a lab report are different than an argumentative paper. So there are different types of genres, and we have to understand the boundaries and expectations in order to write that genre well. So instead of thinking of genre as constraining, see the freedom within it. So there is a lot of room within the boundaries. So one way to think about this is, this process of writing a personal statement can feel very overwhelming, because it's like, where do I start? So if we're looking at genre as like, oh, here are like some really clear parameters for what this personal statement should be, hopefully that gives you a little bit of comfort in terms of you don't have so much to choose from, right? So within the personal statement genre, there are some things that are expected of the genre, but don't get caught up in thinking that there's a right or a wrong. Don't trust resources that tell you that there is a formula. There's like one perfect formula, one silver bullet to writing the personal statement, because there are a lot of ways to successfully write these documents. So thinking about genre and like, okay, what is this genre? What is expected out of personal statements? Next, an important thing that you should know about personal statements is the audience. So what do you know about this audience, the audience that will be reading your personal statement? So in truth, you know very little about the audience of who, who specifically is going to be reading your personal statements. You don't know that much about their interests, their motivations, their frustrations, or passions. So don't worry about them. What I mean by this is like, you can't cater your own writing to the audience because you don't know who the audience is, right? It's more important to put the focus actually on yourself. Know who your audience is in terms of the knowledge that they bring, right? Like you wouldn't be explaining engineering to them. You wouldn't need to include that in your personal statement. But what you do know is that they care about the field and they care about their program or department. So you want to, I'm highlighting these two things because it's important when it comes to a personal statement to don't get stuck, to get stuck thinking, what are they looking for? That seems like a way to approach personal statements. Like, what are they looking for? How do I write the perfect personal statement? And then try to cater your personal statement to those needs, right? Instead, flip that approach. Ask yourself, what do I want to convey about myself? And then with purpose, So we want to dive deeper into this question. What do you want to convey about yourself? So in thinking about the purpose of a personal statement is to reveal who you are, right? Not necessarily to give another list of what it is that you have accomplished or the things that you have done, but how can this give a picture of who you are? So your purpose in a personal statement is to demonstrate that you are a capable and qualified candidate who is moreover an excellent fit for this particular opportunity, whatever program that it is that you're applying for. So let's break that apart a little bit. What are the components of being able to show that you're capable and qualified and that you're an excellent fit for the opportunity? So what do you actually want to convey in a personal statement? So you want to demonstrate, right? You want to back up ideas with specific examples. The place that you can be really specific is the verbs that you choose that reflect what you actually did. You can talk about like maybe an internship that you did or a project you were a part of, but if you're just peripherally involved, that is not really showcasing as best as possible what you're capable of, right? So think of things that you have been involved in and think of all the dynamic verbs that you can use to show that you really contributed to something. So not just talking about, yeah, I was a part of this, but what did you contribute to that? And what does that reveal about you as a thinker or a scholar or a learner? You also want to convey that you're capable and qualified. So again, this is not a repeat of your resume or a list of achievements. Instead, select only what you need to tell, your story for this particular program. So one way that personal statements can feel really overwhelming is that you feel you need to put the totality of your educational career into a document, right? And then it becomes really hard to decide, well, which one's important. So a part of writing your personal statement is, I kind of think about it as like curating, like you're curating at a museum, like you would curate certain art pieces to convey a certain mood, right? You're doing that with yourself and your experiences. You're picking and selecting certain experiences about yourself that convey a certain aspect of yourself, not your whole person, right? So when we underline here for this particular program, so keep in mind that programs are different. They have different values. They look for different things. So if you are just thinking like, I'll just write one personal statement and send it to a whole bunch of programs, that's not really the best approach, right? Because you're not catering it to that particular program. You're not appealing to what makes them unique because you're sending them a generic personal statement about yourself, right? You want to cater it because you are a unique person, you are a unique student, and you want to cater it to their unique program. And then that you're an excellent fit for this opportunity. When we talk about uniqueness, only you have your certain combination of experiences, of values, of perspectives, and you want to show how that's an excellent fit for that particular program, right? So this requires a little research on your end. So know what's essential to that program, research the department and the university to discern their values and priorities. So something that we talk about with personal statements, like how you know a personal statement is successful is that it feels more like a dialogue versus a monologue, right? You want to show how this could be a strong partnership between you and the program, not just like, this is how great I am. Don't you just want to admit me into your program? You want to show like, this is this is who I am, this is how I think, and this is what your program is, and this is how I see it aligning. So now that you know what you should say, now let's kind of take some time to reflect about what you want to say and what you could possibly write about and explore in your personal statement. So if you haven't had, if you don't have it already, if you could get like a writing utensil and paper so that you can jot down some notes and thoughts about the exercises that we're about to do next. Before we go into the exercises, I just want to pause to see if there are any questions about what we talked about in terms of understanding genre, audience, and purpose, and how to kind of reframe the way you think about personal statements. If there are any of those types of questions, please feel free to put that in the chat, okay? All right, so we want to think about, what do you want to convey about yourself? So personal statements are really hard because it's a genre that you're not really used to writing, right? You're used to writing a lot of academic papers, maybe some synthesis papers, maybe summary papers, maybe analysis papers, but personal statements is not something that you write about a lot. And in order to write a good personal statement, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to show about yourself. And I think that requires reflection. And you're busy college students. There's just honestly not a lot of time to reflect. So let's use some of this time that you've already carved out in your schedule to reflect on a couple of things. So I want you to think about a skill that you have. So what is something you've learned to do that you will need in grad school? So just answer that first question right now. So go ahead and jot something down. What is something you've learned to do that you will need in grad school? Okay, hopefully everybody has written something down or is thinking about it. Next question I want to ask you, what's a personal quality that you have that you will need in grad school? So maybe that is, I don't know, hardworking or persistent or resilient. How would you answer that question? Okay, and then the last thing I want you to think about is a lesson. So what is something you have deeply learned in your studies so far? So not necessarily content, but like maybe a certain class, doing a certain class or a lab taught you about tenacity, something along those lines. So not necessarily the content, but like a lesson, like a life lesson you've learned in your studies. Okay, hopefully everybody has written something down for each one of these things, right? Like a skill about yourself, a characteristic about yourself, a lesson about yourself. Now I want you to consider that second question. It's like a follow-up question. So for a skill, how do you know that you are good at that thing? A characteristic, how did you get to be that way? And then a lesson, how did you come to understand that? So I actually want us to take a little bit more time to reflect on these questions, the follow-up questions. So I want to take maybe the next 5 minutes for you to really try to answer these follow-up questions for each one of these categories. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Okay, at this point, I'm hoping to hear from some of you. So I want to ask, how was it to reflect about these three things? Was it hard to come up with something about yourself? What are some thoughts that you had while reflecting on these three different things? Please feel free to come off mic or to put it in the chat. So was it hard to come up with something? Was it, what was it like to reflect on these questions? Okay, thank you, Anjawab. So for the skill one, you feel like you have been introduced to the skill and you do not feel like you're good at it yet. Okay. What other thoughts? So as you all maybe think about this reflection process and maybe put something in the chat, these questions may seem really disconnected from your personal statement right now, but I think these are the types of questions that help you get to a point of specificity that will make your personal statement stand out, right? So that's the easy part, is to identify a skill. And it is that follow-up question, how do you know that you're good at it? So even in Underwap's comment of like, I do not feel like I'm good at it, what questions that could lead to is like, how will I know if that is if that becomes a skill that I will be good at, and how will I know that I'm good at it? So we want to think about what are the ways to frame a story, right? That you can write on your personal statement. So maybe this is you looking back on your experiences, but maybe the way that you ask this question to yourself can inform the way that you go about your experiences in the future, right? So you can identify a skill that you know you will need in grad school, and then start thinking about how do you know you're good at that thing? So what I want to point out in this reflection, maybe some of you found answering the first question easy, like what is something you have deeply learned in your studies so far? The harder question is that follow-up question, right? Because it's asking you about your process and the way that you have evolved. And I think that is what makes a personal statement really interesting, right? Not the skill necessarily, or just the characteristic or the lesson, but how did you get to that point? Because that reveals the way that you think about that certain skill or characteristic or that lesson. Have you heard of the idiom like show, don't tell when it comes to writing? Is that something that is familiar to everyone? Yes. Okay. So this is what I mean by that. So that first question is tell. So you're just saying like, yeah, I know that in grad school, I will need to be self-reliant and humble and uh, determined, right? That's the easy part. That's telling. But how will you know when you are those things? That's where you're showing, right? So I want to encourage you to, when you answer a question, what are the other questions that could follow? Because that's what's getting you to a level of specificity that makes your personal statement stand out. And it makes your personal statement unique to you, right? Like anybody can say that they're determined, or anybody can say that they're hardworking, but the way that you get to that, or the way that you know that you're good at that thing, is different for everybody. And that's what can set your personal statement apart. So before you can write authentically, and I think that is like kind of like the secret sauce of the personal statements, is does it feel authentic or does it feel generic, right? But so before you can write authentically, you need to know what is authentic to you and your experiences. So trust yourself enough to be yourself, and start making a database of experiences you've had and reflections on those experiences. Add to it regularly. So we suggest this as an approach for your personal statement because it is really hard to write just a personal statement from the beginning to end, right? I'm sure all of you have started your personal statement and you know that writing a personal statement is not a linear process. You do not just start with the intro and then you have some examples and then you're done. It requires a lot of drafting. It requires a lot of revising. It requires a lot of kind of moving around different experiences to be like, is this the thing I want to convey to the selection committee, to the people who will be making decisions if I should be admitted to this program. So instead of approaching the process of writing a personal statement as if it is a linear process, start making a database of experiences. So based on the questions that were asked over here, right? Like these questions, start thinking about the skills that you want to highlight, the characteristics you want to highlight, and the lessons you want to highlight, and reflect on them and keep a database of those things so that when it is time to write your personal statement, you can start mixing and matching and seeing what creates the vision of yourself that you would like for that program to see about you. So Unduap's comment of like, I do not feel like I'm good at it yet. Maybe that's something that you keep in mind so that you look for experiences that you can start thinking about, okay, how do I know I'm good at this particular skill? It kind of helps reframe the experiences that you will have that you could possibly write in a personal statement. So questions to ask yourself. So if I'm talking about this database of experiences, here are questions to ask yourself with experiences that you've already had. So how did the experience feel? So whether that was an internship or experience in a lab or a job, how did that experience feel? What were your emotions before, during, and after? And this question can lead to really surprising answers or interesting answers. Like, what surprised you about it? Like, what did you go into the experiencing thinking that you would get out of it, and what did you actually get out of it? That could lead to like really interesting epiphanies that you can include in your personal statement. You can ask yourself, what else did you learn about yourself, about the world? So if you're doing an internship that connected you to people with all types of perspectives, that's going to change the way you think about yourself and about the world, right? Explore those things in this database of experiences. These are the reflections that you want to have because that's what makes a really rich and unique personal statement. And by the end, how were you different as a result from the experience? How did the experience change you? So again, this will help you kind of narrow down on not just writing like cliche experiences, but real authentic experiences that happened to you that had a real impact on you. So what if you don't have a lot of these experiences yet? There's not a lot of things to put in your database, right? These are the questions that you can ask yourself with experiences that you will have in the future. So you can reflect and think, okay, what do I anticipate learning in this opportunity, this job, this internship? Why do I want to experience this? Really question your intentions. What is it that you want to get out of the experience? And why do you think that is important? You can also ask yourself, what are my assumptions? So my assumptions about myself, the experience, its values, its meaning. I think it could be really helpful if you have these sets of questions. If these are the sets of questions, if these are the questions you're thinking about going into an experience, and then you go into the questions above, like how did the experience feel? What were your emotions before, during, and after? You will have a really like detailed and rich entry of what an experience was. So when we're asking like for specificity or you're asking for uniqueness, you've already done most of the legwork because you've already reflected on these opportunities. So remember that you want to show and don't tell. So after you reflected on this, really talk about like the changes. Really talk about the way that it impacted you. Don't just say like this thing changed me, this internship changed me, or this is the job that made me want to pursue this as a career. Show them or give them a glimpse into your thought process of why you feel that way. So the top two things that you want to do when writing a personal statement, you want to know yourself, right? Know yourself, know what you want to convey about yourself, know what you want, and then you want to show them. You want to show that you want to have that confidence that you know what the program is, you feel confident that you're a good fit for that program, and it shows in your personal statement. So you want to connect the dots for your audience, right? So maybe it is like a very clear fit, but maybe they don't see that. So the personal statement can be a really unique opportunity for you to connect those dots for your audience, right? You can maybe refer to things that are on your resume, not necessarily recount things that are on your resume or on your transcripts, but refer to things and then, create that connection for them so they see why that's relevant. So you want to connect who you are to the kind of person they need. So who you are, this is the pre-work you do before you search for programs or start the application process. Remember, your statement is about you, right? Start paying attention and making time to reflect. So that database is that what we're talking about. That's you paying attention and you making time to reflect about your experiences. So it's a good thing to know who you are first before you start selecting programs, because a possible pitfall of like having your sights set on a program is that it's not the right program for you, but in your mind, that's your ideal program. And you try to like fit yourself into that, right? Possibly better approach is like knowing who you are as a learner, who you are as a thinker, and finding the program that is a fit to you, right? And that will require you doing some research on that program and learning their values and understanding their degree requirements. So don't chase names or rankings, right? Look for genuine spark of interest. What about that program specifically is interesting to you? That kind of thing comes across in a personal statement, right? If it's just like, I just want to go here because it's a top school, that's not as enticing as this particular program or this particular faculty member inspired me to do this thing, and this is why I want to do this, right? That hits a little bit differently than just, I want to go here because it's a top program. So you want to connect this for them, right? But you can only connect it if you have a really strong sense of who you are and who they need. So you want to show them who you are. So you want to decide, what are the essential themes I want to convey about myself, right? So this goes back to like you being a curator. You're not putting the totality of who you are as a person onto this document. If that were the case, that's really hard and that is really overwhelming. But if you know that a certain program values diversity, or you know that a certain program values innovation, maybe those are the themes that you want to explore, and you want to have attributes and characteristics that reflect those themes in your personal statement, right? You want to ask, are each of my essential themes relevant to key aspects of the program and department? So that's why knowing their values, knowing what they stand for, knowing what their vision is will really help you see if that's a place for you, right? You want to be a good match. You don't want to just go somewhere because of prestige, because you want to make sure that it is fulfilling for you as well. And you want to, in your personal statement, develop So am I explicitly demonstrating each theme with a relevant and specific experience? So if you are doing that database, hopefully this is doing that work for you. You can highlight how it's relevant, and you can have a lot of specificity to certain experiences, and again, not having just a generic experience. So remember that for the reader, this is a dialogue, and obviously they won't be able to talk back to you. But what I mean by a dialogue instead of a monologue is that it invites the reader can see themselves in your personal statement, meaning they can see the connection, right? It's not just about you and how smart and great you are, even though that's probably coming through in your transcripts and your resume and things of this nature, but you want to create a document that the reader can envision themselves in what you're saying. So they are not solely trying to learn about you. That would be like a monologue. They're trying to learn about your fit with them, right? So again, like how do you, in your personal statement, is it conveyed how you are a good fit for that particular program? And you want to reflect their values back to them. So you want to demonstrate that you understand this opportunity and the program you would be joining. This just shows, I think, a lot of humility and maturity, right? Because you know that you're not the type to just get into all the programs, right? You know that it's like you are a specific fit for them. And it also shows a level of maturity because like you do the work, you understand what their program is about. You go to great lengths to figure out what is it that they want to do. So I think that this is kind of the pre-work that really helps the personal statement, is that knowing this, you can reflect their values back to them in your writing. So again, if you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask them in the chat. Okay, so I want to talk briefly about things to avoid. So the way that sometimes personal statements can go in the wrong direction is if it's too general or cliche. That's why I've emphasized so much this idea of specificity, and being able to reflect on your own experiences will lead you to that level of specificity. Nobody in the world has had your specific experiences. So that's why we really want you to reflect deeply on the different experiences that you've had. Another way that personal statements can go the wrong direction is if it's just a list of achievements, because there's no, it's kind of a superficial thing, right? There's nothing underneath it. We want to avoid it being just a list of achievements. You know, when we talk about curating your experiences, you're creating like an image in that reader's head, right? And a list of achievements, it doesn't do much to create that image. This kind of goes along with being too general. Like, what did you do? If you are selecting an experience that you find like it sounds pretty impressive and you want to include it, but you want to really highlight what it is that you contributed to that, and not just say, you know, like you were just somebody who was merely a part of it or did just like logistical things to help with the project. You want to really emphasize how you contributed and why that was impactful. And another way that personal statements go askew is if it's a monologue instead of a dialogue. You really want to open up that space to see how you really want to open up that space to let them know that you see this opportunity as a two-way street and not just you like bragging about yourself about how great of a candidate you are. So remember your audience and purpose. Remember who is it that's reading, what you know about that audience, and keep in mind that it's more about what you want to convey. Be aware of your audience, but you want your personal statement to really reflect who you are. The purpose of a personal statement is it's that opportunity to be that connective tissue to everything else that it is in your grad program application package, right? Like they'll see the stats, they'll see like your transcripts, your grades, the things that you were involved in. But the personal statement is like a little glimpse into who you are as a person, what you stand for. So don't miss out on that opportunity. Even if that opportunity is painful to do, maybe it's stressful to write your personal statement, that opportunity is really a good one for you to really showcase who you are as a person. So know yourself. So give yourself that time to do more reflection, give yourself time to write, and just think about experiences or characteristics or lessons that have really impacted you. So do the pre-work to know the many ways that you can write about yourself. And then you want to show them who you are. When you have a really good grasp on who you are, then that becomes a lot easier, right? Showing them who you are. And you want to reflect their values. This comes from doing the research and really understanding what it is that they are trying to achieve as a program. So at the beginning, I talked about how I'm a part of the Writing Hub. We know that writing a personal statement is really overwhelming, can be really daunting. So I just wanted to plug that you can come to the Writing Hub and work with our tutors who are highly trained in helping students with all types of writing projects, personal statements included. So all of our 40 tutors are from all 7 colleges and all types of majors, and they're trained on a weekly basis to help you improve as writers on a variety of assignments. So not just personal statements, but also anything related to your courses, your college writing program courses, they can also help you with. But we've seen a ton of people come in the first 4 weeks to work on their personal statements. So even if the tutor is not specifically in engineering, they can still help you craft a really compelling personal statement. So we focus on writers, not the writing. So this really aligns with this idea of like knowing yourself, reflecting. So it's not just about like the syntax or the grammar of the writing, but who you are as a writer, and they will help make that personal statement as compelling as possible. I also wanted to share, because this is new, we are back in person. So before the pandemic, we were in Geisel Library. We're back in Geisel Library. We have taken measures to make sure that safety is of the utmost concern. So we have fewer tutors, but you can meet with a tutor in person and one-on-one. We also have kept our online services. So you can also meet with a tutor via Zoom or on our online platform at WC Online. And you also can do asynchronous appointments. So this is a good choice for so say you're in the later part of your writing process, you have like a final draft and you are really busy, you just don't have time. So something you can do is make an asynchronous appointment. You upload your draft, you're just, and you're really clear about what you're looking for. So maybe it's like, I just want to make sure that the ending makes sense with the rest of the personal statement and that it's a good ending. And then the tutor would record a screencast with feedback for you and then deliver it to you via email. And you have access to that for 7 days to go over it on your own time. So we have these 3 types of appointments that can accommodate your needs and schedules. And any one of these would be super helpful for writing a personal statement. So that is the end. Before I get into the post-workshop survey, just want to see if there are any questions or if there's anything you want me to elaborate or any thoughts on what the content we just covered. Could we have access to these slides? Okay, this is a great question. What I'll do is I'm going to send out a PDF of main takeaways. Sometimes it's really overwhelming to look at the slides, and just like, what was the most important thing? I don't need all of it. So I will make a PDF and it'll be like main takeaways, those questions that we covered, right? And also just like, things to keep in mind, and how to make this database of experiences. So I will email those who are in attendance. I have all your email addresses, and I can email you that within the next day or two.
And then this workshop will also be posted on our YouTube channel. But we'll also make sure to get you all the takeaways that Maggie's talking about.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to just look at a thing really quick. You don't want to like scroll through the whole thing. So yes, I will send that soon. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed talking with you all. Before you go, if you could fill out this survey. So it's just to be a bookend for the pre-workshop survey, just to make sure that our content is resonating with folks, that you're getting what you want and you're coming for, and see if there's anything that we can improve on. So as soon as you're done with this survey, that's the end of the workshop. Thank you so much for having me, Alejandra, and I hope this was helpful.
And thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, no problem.
Great. We'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you again, Maggie, for coming by. And that is it. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.